In the book about Chow Yun-fat, I noticed that even in the introduction in the first couple of chapters, it gives a fairly detailed account of his life, and you begin to see something very clearly. Everything we do in life is deeply shaped by education. But among all forms of education, the most powerful is self-education. Self-education runs deeper than anything your parents or teachers can offer. For those who lack the ability to guide and grow themselves, parental and academic influence will shape them heavily. But for those who do develop the capacity to educate themselves, to reflect, to grow, to seek understanding, the influence of parents and teachers becomes more of a reference point than a defining force. That's a huge shift. And there's another layer to this, related to our core belief systems. For those who don't accept the idea of past lives or rebirth, you can still see this in simpler terms. From the moment we're in the womb, we begin forming patterns, habits, ways of thinking. Over time, those thought patterns solidify into a framework, a mental model, and that model begins to drive our behavior. That's why our thoughts influence our speech, and our thoughts shape our actions. Thought is the seed, while speech and action are the fruits. And when those actions are repeated again and again, they create results. And once results appear, they don't just end there, they loop back. They begin to reshape who we are. That's why we say results create personality. When something is repeated again and again, it becomes a habit. And that habit eventually becomes your way of life, your destiny even. That's the modern way of putting it. But the ancient masters, the wise ones of old, said it even more simply and elegantly. They said, our thoughts, our inner feelings, these are our mental karma. And mental karma is what leads the way. It comes first. It governs everything else. Your thoughts, mental karma, shape your speech, verbal karma. Your thoughts also shape your actions, physical karma. So mental karma drives both verbal and physical karma. And when we repeat these, thoughts, words, actions, day after day, they create a flow, a current. That's what we call karmic force. Karmic force is what happens when a seed, an action, is repeated over and over again until it gains momentum and shapes who we are. Think about it. Someone who has a bad temper tends to repeat those negative behaviors. Over time, those become their character. On the other hand, someone kind and disciplined repeats positive actions, and that becomes their nature. That's why some people can take a class, even attend training for weeks or months, and still find it hard to change. It's because they haven't yet turned that lesson into a habit. They haven't created a new karmic current. The impact of the course may have nudged them a little, sparked a small change, but without consistency, the old habits come back. A week or two later, they're back to their old ways. That's why transformation requires discipline. You have to build a new rhythm in your life. You have to train, wake up early, learn martial arts, go for a run, tighten your self-discipline. If you're someone who tends to oversleep, someone who's overweight, someone who struggles with health, you're not going to change just because you joined a class. You'll need at least 6 months of consistent training before that new habit becomes part of who you are. Forget about the whole 21 days myth. That's just feel-good psychology. Try quitting smoking for 21 days. On day 22, take a puff again, and it'll taste better than ever. You'll be right back where you started. That's how real habits work. So this whole 21 days to build a habit idea, it's something psychologists came up with to give us a little encouragement. Just enough motivation to hang in there. And once you've done 21 days, they say, great job, now do another 21, and so on. That's how they ease us into change. But the truth is, it takes around 3 months of consistent effort before a new habit really starts to form. It doesn't happen easily. It doesn't happen quickly. Changing your karma, meaning your patterns of thinking, your behaviors, your lifestyle, is no small task. To truly shift those deep-rooted patterns takes time, awareness, and effort. And so, it comes back to something we said earlier. Understanding, awareness, and especially self-education, combined with the karmic influences from our past. All of these shape the kind of person we're becoming. That's why when you look at someone like Chow Yun-fat, who's willing to let go, to give away almost all of his wealth after decades of working in the film industry, there's likely a deeper story behind that. A decision like that doesn't come from nowhere. In my view, it comes down to two key causes. From the Buddhist perspective, we accept the idea that life doesn't begin and end with just this one existence. We don't simply appear on Earth for 70 or 80 years by chance, only to vanish completely when we die. That view would feel inconsistent, wouldn't it? So let's assume for a moment that life truly spans many lifetimes, what we call the wheel of rebirth. If we take that view, then it becomes easier to understand someone like Chow Yun-fat. It's likely that he's been involved in charity and service not just in this life, but across many lifetimes. That kind of generosity, that kind of moral foundation, doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's cultivated, life after life. Perhaps in past lives he practiced more through acts of service, through righteous deeds rather than through monastic retreat. He may not have taken the path of isolation, going up the mountain to meditate, to become a preacher or a sage. Not in this particular phase of his spiritual journey, instead in this life, and possibly over several recent lifetimes. His karma may have inclined him more toward being in the world, helping others, doing good through action and influence. And that's how we can begin to understand his current choices, not just through the lens of this life, but through the karma of many lives. That's one way to view his past life karmic inheritance. Now, let's take a closer look at Chow Yun-fat's present life karma, what he's been through in this very lifetime. He was born into a family where his father struggled with alcoholism, gambling, and addiction. His father would regularly take whatever little money the family had and gamble it away. As a result, the household was constantly in poverty. Chow Yun-fat and his siblings often went hungry. There was nothing left at home. And his mother, she spent her days working tirelessly, begging, scraping together whatever she could just to feed the children. That image, the image of a hard-working mother, worn down yet resilient, always finding a way to care for her kids, left a deep impression on his heart. That, right there, is a powerful form of self-education. Not learned from books, not taught in school, but I learned from life itself. Learn from the people around you. Learn from your circumstances. And when Chow Yun-fat was just a teenager, barely into his teens, his father passed away. That too we can understand as karma in motion. A man who lives a life of addiction, gambling, and reckless behavior, how could it possibly end well? It's no surprise that his health deteriorated. When you overindulge, you weaken the body. And when the body weakens, early death becomes likely. That's just how cause and effect works. You plant the seed of indulgence, you harvest the fruit of poor health and family breakdown. And with that comes mental exhaustion, emotional collapse, and ultimately an early grave. What did he leave behind? Nothing. Just his children and a grieving wife, with no stability, no resources. And in the middle of all that, Chow Yun-fat had to quit school. He had to step out into the world, to struggle, to survive, to fight for a future. From the moment Chow Yun-fat began fending for himself on the streets, his life started to take shape, and then one fine day, by a twist of fate, he stepped into the world of acting. And when you look at the roles he became famous for, it's easy to see he was exceptional at playing streetwise characters. Whether he was cast as a wealthy young heir or someone in a high-ranking position, his tone, his expressions, his way of speaking always carried that street flavor. There was always a bit of that big brother charisma, rough around the edges, bold and slightly rugged. It never had the polished academic elegance of someone who'd studied from A to Z like a PhD or a professor. Why? Because that wasn't his path, that wasn't his background. He learned life on the streets. His posture, his tone, his instincts were all sharpened by survival. And that became part of his gift as an actor, authenticity born from experience. And I believe that deep down, the painful imprint left by his father, the gambling, the recklessness, the complete inability to provide, along with the unwavering resilience of his mother, who carried the whole family on her shoulders. Those experiences shaped the heart of Chow Yun-fat. They gave him a deep instinctive compassion for the poor, for orphans, for people who struggle. And maybe that's one of the biggest reasons why he gives so easily. He knows what it's like to have nothing. He remembers the hunger, the despair. And so now, even after decades of fame and success, when he gives it all away, it's no big deal to him, because he's already been to the bottom. He's lived through the worst. And once you've been there, letting go becomes simple. Now, when we say Chow Yun-fat gave away all his wealth, let's be clear. He and his wife were already famous enough, respected enough, and well-established enough that they would be just fine. Giving everything away didn't mean they'd be out on the streets the next day, struggling to find their next meal. It's not like going back to his childhood when he came from the Mekong Delta to Saigon with nothing to his name, not even a place to sleep. Back then, he had to knock on doors, begging for any kind of work, jobs that paid almost nothing. That's not the case now. So when he gives everything away, what he's giving's what he's accumulated, his material wealth. But his reputation, his talent, his influence, those are untouched. No one can take those from him. And there's something else quite special about Chow Yun-fat, his simplicity. Not just his generosity, but his way of living. He lives incredibly simply. And I believe that comes from his early years, from growing up on the streets, from dropping out of school at a young age. Life taught him. If you don't learn to live simply, you won't survive. That's a deep lesson. And it echoes something that those on a spiritual path will understand well. For anyone who has ever entered a monastic life, you'll know. The life of a sincere practitioner, a true monk, is often harder than prison. I mean that materially, physically. A true monk often eats only one meal a day. In that sense, it's even more austere than being behind bars. Monastics, those who truly commit to the spiritual path and live up in the mountains, often have nothing to protect them. Just 3 robes and a bowl. That's all they carry. So in terms of material comfort, they actually live worse than prisoners. But internally, their inner strength is extraordinary. Prisoners may endure physical hardship, yes, but they usually don't know how to cultivate inner resilience. That's the difference. Monks, however, train the mind. They know how to build that inner strength, and over time their hearts become steady, calm, and unshakable. And the steadier the heart becomes, the stronger our happiness becomes, because true happiness comes from within. It doesn't come from external things. The outside world, that's just a condition, a set of circumstances. The real cause lies within. When the inner cause is strong, it starts to shape the conditions around it. But when the inner cause is weak, it becomes a victim of those external conditions. Anyone raising a child knows this. If you protect your child too much, if you constantly shield them from life, they grow up fragile inside. They never have to do anything for themselves, and so their inner world remains soft, untrained. Then one day they step out into the real world, and they get tricked, hurt, or overwhelmed, because the external world is full of strong influences, conditions, and those conditions overpower their inner strength. And that's why they grow up either afraid or dependent. Now, when we look at Chow Yun-fat, you can see that those early difficult years, the struggle, the poverty, the responsibility, shaped him deeply. He learned a lot from life, and one thing became very clear in him: a strong sense of duty to protect his mother and to care for the people he loved in that poor, fragile family. That shaped his heart, and it shaped the man he became. So later in life, when Chow Yun-fat gave everything away, you could also see something else. His wife was already quite elderly. Chow Yun-fat himself is now in his 60s, close to 70. And what we see in their relationship is something truly rare, a deep, enduring loyalty. Think about it. Loyalty in the life of a movie star is incredibly hard to find. Because behind all the fame, there are countless temptations, especially for someone of his status. Young, ambitious actors or actresses trying to make it in the industry. They'd do anything to get ahead. All it takes is for a senior actor like him to give a nod, a signal of support, and they'd latch on, offering everything. Completely. And yet, he stayed faithful. That kind of integrity doesn't come from just one lifetime of effort. To live a life like Chow Yun-fat's, to be generous, disciplined, grounded, humble, and faithful, that doesn't just happen. If you have the eyes to see beyond time and space, you'd know. He must have cultivated deep spiritual roots in many past lives. This kind of character is not built overnight. It's the fruit of years, lifetimes, of inner work and moral development. That, at least, is my own reflection, my personal view, after reading through his biography.